All right, welcome back to Slide Into Sports, live on 103.1 FM on WVLP Radio. I'm your host, Ryan Schleier, a.k.a. Schlide, and here we talk about the trickle-down effects of rules and regulations in college football, or in today's case, lack thereof, and we also talk about other relevant sports going on as well, relevant outcomes as well. Today's stories that we're going to be breaking today, or not really breaking, but more or less just talking about, we've got Brendan Sorsby getting eligibility by essentially crying to the courts and winning. We'll talk a little bit more about that here in a second. We also have to talk about the Spurs versus Knicks series. We're 3 games into the series. The series is now 2-1. We'll go a little bit more into the outcome of the series and one of the stories surrounding that series. And we're also going to talk a little bit about the NHL playoffs. So let's start off with this Brendan Sorsby story, since it is, after all, kind of the main focus of the show, which is college sports and the rules and regulations and the trickle-down effects. So Brendan Sorsby, his case got, there was a lot of reaction to this online also, but the results of his case came out, and he was deemed eligible by the courts that he was able to play in college football. Now, like I said before, there's a lot of reactions, not just online from personalities like myself, but there's also reactions from athletic directors and conferences as well, both within the Big 12 and outside of the Big 12. 2 athletic directors already have reportedly instructed their departments to refrain from scheduling Texas Tech in non-conference play, not just in college football, but in all sports. So this case, primarily, it's only regarding college football right now, but this is kind of the effect that it's having on other sports as well. So Georgia, Nebraska, pretty decent at sports like baseball, softball, volleyball. Their teams are now not going to be playing Texas Tech in their non-conference play. So that could open up their schedule to other opportunities to schedule other quality non-conference opponents in those sports, of course. But this has led to not only individual schools taking this directive, but conferences are starting to consider not scheduling Texas Tech in their non-conference permanently. The Big Ten, and notably the Big Ten and SEC, because of the fact that Nebraska and Georgia went this direction already. That got the other conference, that got the other schools within the conference, as well as the heads of the conferences, talking about not scheduling Texas Tech in the non-conference. Also, with this story, something that kind of drives me a little bit insane about the Brendan Sorsby story. The gambling so in my mind, objectively speaking, it should have been an open and closed case. He admitted to the wrongdoing. He admitted to the gambling. He admitted that he did it while he was on Indiana. And when he was on, so just to put into context here, Brendan Sorsby is 22 years old right now in 2026. He turned 22 in January. So when he was on Indiana, he was still in his teenage years when placing bets. Because again, he said that he was placing bets while he was on Indiana. He was on Indiana from 2022 to 2023 as a redshirt. So, not only did Brendan Sorsby break the NCAA's rules of not being allowed to sports bet in college sports bet on your own team, or sports bet for your own team, or against your own team. In some cases, Brendan actually bet the under against his own team, but he was also under the age of 21, which is illegal whether or not you're in high school. Like if you're in high school, or whether or not you're an athlete in college or not. Like, it's illegal to sports bet under the age of 21. We also know that in Texas, you are actually not allowed to sports bet. So in his case, he also admitted that he would send money to people outside of Texas to place bets for him. Highly illegal. Highly illegal. Like, this should have been objectively open and closed case, admitted to the wrongdoing, and it was a pretty blatant, violation of the rules. I mean, most people, it probably would have been an open and closed case, but he's on Texas Tech, one of the highest paid players in college football right now. He's also, he could possibly get a Heisman. I mean, imagine that. Imagine if he gets a Heisman. That would be absolutely insane. Now, there are some schools, at least within the Big 12, that are kind of happy that Brendan Sorsby is still playing because now they have a villain that they can go up against, which, sure, I guess, but just kind of looking at this short-term, long-term, like looking at the outcome of this in the short term versus the long term. I mean, we can even go back to other college football cases like Diego Pavia and Trinidad Chambliss, which each of those cases were completely different from each other as well as Brendan Sorsby, but they were all kind of fighting for the same thing, essentially. I mean, they're trying to either get more eligibility or retain the eligibility that they had left. But again, this all started with Diego Pavia back when he wanted a 7th year in college after playing, I believe it was 2 years of junior college, so that he could play one more season at Vanderbilt. He ended up winning that case. Now, a lot of people are saying that, with this Brendan Sorsby case, that, the precedent has been set that you can go around the NCAA to the courts to get what you want. Well, that precedent was already set, or at the very least, the groundwork for that precedent was laid out when Diego Pavia won his case to get his 7th year of eligibility. Then, fast forward to a few months ago, Trinidad Chambliss is trying to get another year of eligibility instead of going to the draft. Went on this really long ordeal, about a month and a half long ordeal between the NCAA and the courts, going back and forth between those two. The court saying yes, like granting his eligibility, the NCAA saying no, the court saying yes, NCAA saying no, court saying yes, NCAA saying no. And then eventually the courts finally said yes, and then NCAA kind of caved. That kind of laid down the groundwork as well. Now, Trinidad Chambliss probably had the best case out of these three guys, just looking at each individual case, because Trinidad Chambliss was claiming that for a majority of the season, he should have had a redshirt year. I believe it was either his freshman or sophomore year in college where he should have been eligible for a redshirt, but he was not granted that eligibility because he was on the starting roster. So that is a little bit more understandable. But because of the outcome of that case, now we fast forward to this Brendan Sorsby case that just happened, where he gets granted his eligibility despite not only breaking NCAA laws, but also just the Texas state laws and the U.S. laws, like the national laws on sports betting, where you're not allowed to sports bet when you're under 21 years old. Like, it's mind-blowing to me that there are some people that are happy, that are not Texas Tech fans, for Brendan Sorsby to still be allowed to play college football. I mean, just looking at all the parts of the case, he really shouldn't be allowed to play. He's very lucky that he is able to play college football this coming season in a couple of months. I mean, just incredibly lucky that he's able to. Because again, I'll say it 100 times, so I'm going to say it again. But if it was somebody that wasn't as highly paid as Brendan Sorsby or as good of a player as Brendan Sorsby is, they probably would have not won their case. They probably wouldn't have won their case. But this case has laid down the groundwork for other schools to essentially do the same thing. If their athlete gets caught gambling, if they get caught breaking any other NCAA rules, all you got to do is go to the courts. I mean, the Diego Pavia one laid the groundwork. Trinidad Chambliss kind of coasted off that groundwork. And now Brendan Sorsby basically put another layer on top of that groundwork to create a nicely paved road, like a highway, to where other schools can essentially do the exact same thing if their star player gets caught breaking the NCAA rules. Because it's very clear, if it wasn't clear before, it's very clear now that the NCAA is incapable of enforcing their own rules. Which is kind of crazy to think about, because there was talk online that the CFP was going to dissolve at one point, or people were saying, like, making jokes about the CFP dissolving just because it's pretty dysfunctional. But what's crazy is that the NCAA might dissolve before the CFP. And what happens after the NCAA dissolves, I'm not entirely sure, to be completely honest. It's definitely going to cause some chaos for college sports. But the result of this case, again, just kind of going back to the short term and long term. So short term helps Texas Tech. They retain their starting quarterback. College football, they have a star player that's going to be on everybody's television screens for one more year. Everybody's got a villain to root against. Those are the short-term things. That's going to last a year. The long-term effects of this are that more players like Brendan Sorsby, that maybe they get caught gambling, or maybe they get caught with breaking other rules within the NCAA, whether it's recruiting violations or what have you. All they got to do is just go to the courts and talk about how it's going to affect their lives, and then they're going to win. And we're going to see more and more and more cases like Brendan Sorsby's, where athletes and schools are going to be trying to either get more eligibility or stay eligible despite breaking rules, no matter how blatantly, like Brendan Sorsby did. But yeah, that is the state of where we're at currently when it comes to the NCAA and college sports. So Brendan Sorsby also posted a comment on Instagram, or at least he posted a what do you do? He posted a reaction to the case, kind of. So I'm just gonna read that out to you really quick. He posted this on his Instagram, and he said, "I am very grateful for the endless support I've received throughout this entire process. I'm also grateful for the chance to rejoin my teammates. This opportunity comes with the responsibility to remain focused on my personal growth, the ability to learn from this experience, and to be able to use my situation to help others going forward." Which, fair play. I think that's a pretty reasonable comment to put out. Do I necessarily think that he should still be allowed to play? No. I mean, initially, when I saw the case, I was like, okay, maybe he should just have a maybe 3-4 game suspension or something. Like, just have some kind of punishment for breaking the rules rather blatantly. Again, might I add, like, just very blatantly breaking the rules within the NCAA and just in general. I mean, again, just not even breaking the NCAA rules, but just breaking the law, period. But yeah, I mean, he could easily use the platform that he has now to encourage people to not do what he did, I guess. But do we really think that people are going to, or at least college athletes that maybe aren't as lucky as Brendan Sorsby to get as much NIL money as he has gotten, to not try the exact same thing that he did because they now know that they can get away with it? They can make money and also still they can make their money without getting NIL by breaking the law or just the NCAA rules, depending on if they're under 21 or not. But some college athletes are not as lucky as Brendan Sorsby is, where he gets millions upon millions of dollars in NIL money. There are a lot of athletes that are not as lucky as Brendan Sorsby. And now, because of this case, I'm worried that there's going to be a lot of athletes that don't have as much NIL money are going to start sports betting. Maybe they get caught, but they know that they can get away with it now, or at least get away with it easier than they were able to before. So, yeah, people come from different situations, some more desperate than others. So the fact that this door is now open for them is why I think that we are going to see more and more cases like Brendan Sorsby's, because it's very clear that the NCAA cannot do anything regarding the case, or regarding their own rules and regulations. They can't enforce their own rules and regulations, then there is complete and utter chaos. That's pretty much all I've got regarding the Brendan Sorsby story. Just a lot of outrage online. I saw Grant House posted a couple of things essentially saying the exact same thing that I'm saying. The only other person that I saw bring up the fact that Brendan Sorsby not only broke NCAA rules, but also broke the law in making bets while he was under the age of 21. That was Ohio State, who is on Barstool. I think a lot of what I've seen online, though, is reactions, or just a lot of rage. And honestly, I get the rage. I'm frankly just not entirely that surprised because of what I said before about how Diego Pavia laid down the foundation and Trinidad Chambliss kind of, verified it a little bit. Maybe you can do it once, but if you can do it twice, then you can definitely do it 3 times and 4 times and 5 times and so on. So, yeah, just laid down essentially a highway for athletes to make money illegally, or at least the wrong way. And granted, I don't think the athlete should have to do that. They should be getting paid. But there's a way to do things, and if the NCAA was actually able to enforce their own rules, then I think it would be a little bit of a different world that we'd be living in regards to the results of these cases, and just the world of college sports in general, I think would be so much different. But in a good way. I mean, you look at the at NIL. I mean, it was a pretty good thing to start. Athletes were getting paid more, justifiably so. But then it kind of turned into a scheme to give all the money to football and basketball because all the schools want to do well in football and basketball. That it is now hurting Olympic sports. But if the NCAA was able to enforce their rules, if the athletes didn't have to go to court essentially to get more eligibility and get more money, then a lot of this wouldn't, I don't even really think any of this would really be happening, except if Brendan Sorsby kept sports betting. I mean, I think that's one of the things that probably would not have changed. Just kind of thinking out loud about this a little bit. I mean, you look at the, like, sports betting and just gambling in general can be addictive and it can be a problem. And it's clear that, I mean, Brendan Sorsby has even said this himself in posts that he has an issue with sports betting. Like, just, he has an addiction to it. So I think that's one thing that probably would not have changed. Like, the only thing that probably would have changed would be the outcome of the case. Because if there was if there was the enforcement, then there'd be even less justification. So, I don't know. And I mean, I'm looking at this right now, but Big 12 might take some action against Brendan Sorsby. I don't know exactly what that action is going to be, whether it be suspension of some kind or what. But I mean, as far as I know, as of right now, I believe there's only a 2-game suspension. It could end up being more, depending on what the Big 12 conference does or what they say. Suspensions, I think, can sometimes often be almost like a joke, if you think about it. I mean, you look at Michigan, I mean, they got suspended for, or at least I believe it was Sharon Moore who got suspended for, 2 games 2 seasons ago? And I think the only game that was important that he missed was the Oklahoma game, and that was it. I mean, even when Jim Harbaugh was there, like when he faced that suspension, I believe it was the year they won the national championship, actually, when he was not leading the team when they played Ohio State. I believe that was the only real suspension, or at least game suspension, where it had implications because it was an important game. I mean, it was the game. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the times when we see 3-game suspension, 2-game suspension, oftentimes those games get relegated to the non-conference opponents that are non-Power 5, that are probably in the bottom, 30 teams. Not even in the top 100. So, a lot of these suspensions, they don't carry a lot of weight, and that's part of the reason why when I say I think he should not be eligible to play this season, that's why. Because Texas Tech really is not going to be facing that much implication. I mean, let's look at their schedule really quick, because so again, just kind of going back to the 2-game suspension, right? Their first game is September 5th against ACU. Their second game is against Oregon State, September 12th. Do we really think that the 2-game suspension is really going to have any kind of impact on those first 2 games? Do we really think that Texas Tech is going to suffer at all from missing those 2 games, or from Brendan Sorsby missing those 2 games? I really don't. I don't think so. I mean, Texas Tech has a good enough roster around them to where they would not need Brendan Sorsby for those first 2 games. Now, if it instead was Oregon State in Houston, because Houston would be game 3 on Texas Tech's schedule, that'd be a little bit different. I think Houston could maybe get the jump on Texas Tech if they didn't have Brendan Sorsby. That would be one where there'd be a little bit more punishment involved, not just for Sorsby, but also for the team as well. So, again, I mean, it's going to be wild, but because it's just a 2-game suspension, it's only going to be just ACU and Oregon State, where Brendan Sorsby is not going to be playing. Now, just because he's got 2-game suspensions doesn't mean that he's not going to be able to practice. So, if anything, a 2-game suspension, missing those first 2 games, is almost a blessing in disguise for Brendan Sorsby, because that's 2 less games where his legs are going to be more fresh by the end of the year, because he would be playing 2 less games than every other starting quarterback in college football. Not to mention the fact that it's been shown the past couple of years, and not even just the past couple of years, and I'm mainly talking about the past couple of years because that was the first 2 years of the 12-team playoff, but even in the 14 playoff era, especially, the last year of the 14 playoff era with Florida State, injuries happen late in the season, and they have an immediate impact. Texas Tech having Brendan Sorsby rested for those first 2 games in that 2-game suspension, that is not a punishment for Texas Tech. It is actually a blessing in disguise. And you heard it here first. It is actually a blessing in disguise that Texas Tech that Brendan Sorsby does not have to play in the ACU game or in the Oregon State game. It is a blessing in disguise for Texas Tech. It absolutely is. And anybody who says otherwise is delusional. I'm sorry, it's true. It's true. If anybody says otherwise, they are completely and utterly delusional. Okay, so before we talk about the Spurs versus Knicks series and a story around it, which a little bit controversial, maybe not so controversial, and talking about the NHL playoffs, which have been very exciting to say the least, we're going to take a short little break. And with that being said, here is a message from our sponsor.
This broadcast is brought to you by Authentic Impact, a Northwest Indiana executive coaching practice working with family businesses to ensure their legacy. When you started your business, you made a promise to do things differently, better than anyone else. Over time, as the business grows, that promise can get diluted or even lost. Penny Schleier at Authentic Impact helps family business owners reignite that promise, weaving it into team engagement, performance, and hiring so your passion becomes the heartbeat of your company again. Learn more at authentic-impact-coaching.com.
Okay, so now we've got NBA playoffs. And this playoffs has been very interesting. Firstly, because no team has won at their home stadium yet. I mean, San Antonio won their first game of the series last night against New York in New York, and New York won the first 2 games of the series in San Antonio. Now, there's a little bit of controversy surrounding Game 3, and part of it is because of the atmosphere. Part of it is because of the officiating. Some people are saying that San Antonio got away with some calls, illegal substitutions, stuff like that. The atmosphere was a little bit controversial because the president was in attendance. And normally, and the reason why I say that was controversial for the atmosphere was because the president and Stephen A. Smith got into a little bit of an argument online because Stephen A. Smith was saying that the president going to Game 3 is going to compromise the atmosphere of Game 3 in Madison Square Garden because, and his justification was that New York is already a very congested area with traffic, but when the president goes to a game, there's also the added security that adds to the congestion. So you've got the Secret Service, you've got the local PD that are surrounding Madison Square Garden, the tailgates and the other festivities like the watch parties that happen outside of Madison Square Garden, they all had to either be canceled or moved further away from Madison Square Garden, which again takes away from the atmosphere in MSG. And now Stephen A. Smith is using that as justification for why the Knicks lost. Now, I do think that I knew this was going to be a pretty close series. My initial prediction for this final series was that the Knicks were going to win in 6. But actually, I'm going to change my prediction. And I'm going to say the Knicks are going to win in 5. Because I think the Knicks are going to win the next time they play, which is Game 4 tomorrow at 7:30. I think New York wins tomorrow. I think San Antonio is then going to win Game 5. And then New York is going to take it back to MSG, and then they're going to win Game 6. That's kind of, oh, wait, no. So yeah, I guess it would be Knicks in 6. So never mind. My prediction is still in line currently. Lucky me. Okay, so I'm kind of taking back a little bit of what I said before. My prediction is actually going to remain the exact same. I think New York is going to try to get this game tonight. San Antonio is going to want to get it back in San Antonio. And then it'll be in New York again. And ideally for New York, it'll be the only game left that they would need to win, assuming that they win tomorrow in Game 4. And then they would win in Madison Square Garden, which would be absolute, complete, and utter chaos, to say the least. Complete and utter chaos. I mean, the city has been waiting for one of their sports teams to, or at least, regarding basketball and football, because baseball, the Yankees have been largely successful. And that's nothing really new to New York, but their basketball team kind of coming back into relevance is a huge deal for the city of New York. And Madison Square Garden is a very iconic place for not just New York, but also the sport of basketball. It's a highly regarded basketball arena. It's also a highly regarded venue. So New York has been wanting this for a while. They have been practically dying for it. But kind of going back a little bit more into the controversy with the president being at the game and Stephen A. Smith's comments, I kind of agree with Stephen A. Smith's comments a little bit. I do think that, when you go to a game like MSG and it makes it a lot harder for, I guess, regular people to attend the game, which I'm not even sure how many regular people, in air quotes, would be there because the tickets were so expensive. I mean, I think the cheapest ticket was $6,000 or something like that, which is absolutely insane. It might have even been more than that. It might have actually been closer to $9,000 for back room seating or just nosebleed seats at the next game. Just absolutely nuts. But it's just when you have that already kind of taking away from the atmosphere with, maybe not the normal crowd of Knicks fans being able to go because they might not be able to afford it because of the state of the economy, among other things, as well as the fact that the tickets are just way more expensive because it's the first time that the Knicks have been in the NBA Finals in 30 years. So it's a huge deal, and it's something that doesn't happen or hasn't happened very often. So the prices are already going to be up. It's just not ideal for, just the regular fan that maybe had the season tickets for this year. And now they're not able to go to the final game because of how expensive the tickets are. Some of the comments that the president made about the tickets being super expensive, I didn't particularly like very much, simply because it just seemed very insensitive to the fans. And I mean, it's already been pretty clear that he doesn't really care all that much about the regular person, considering the facts, like considering some of his comments about the gas prices, but that's kind of a little bit out of my depth. But my main point is that, you know what, like, my main point is that, you know, you are a New Yorker. Like, I feel like he should have been a little bit more understanding of New Yorkers and their desire to attend the game, and, you know, maybe not being like, oh, well, that's life, like, they're expensive, blah blah blah, like, just kind of going on a little tirade. Just doesn't really seem like the right move, especially, you know, considering approval ratings and among other things. But I do think that, again, kind of going back to Stephen A's comments, just the added congestion already made it just so much more difficult for the atmosphere to really be what it was, or what it was meant to be on that first game. And honestly, that could take away from this next game, because now San Antonio, they're used to Eastern time. They're going to be a little bit more accustomed to New York. They've now been kind of eased into the New York atmosphere. So even if in this game 4 it is rowdier in New York, I think it'll be easier for San Antonio to adjust, or it could be easier for San Antonio to adjust, simply because they were there and won game 3 in New York. So I think that could present some potential problems for the Knicks coming up. Also, there was some controversy about the reception of the president at the game 3. And honestly, I'm not entirely sure what the reception was, because there are some networks like CNN, NBC that are saying the president got booed. There are some networks like Fox that are saying that the president got cheers. And so what I did was I started looking into the comments of each of the videos that were on social media, on Instagram, on TikTok. And that's I normally like to look there, because I don't trust those sources. I don't trust sources like that regarding this, because they all have an agenda of their own. And I look at the comments because that's what people are like, that's people's actual reactions. People that were at the game will go, or people that were at where the breaking news story happened, oftentimes they will make an appearance in the comments and they will say whether or not the video that is posted is true. So that's normally how I kind of go about looking at certain things with sourcing and whatnot. And honestly, it seems like the reception was very mixed based on what I was reading. There were some people that said that the president got cheers. There were some people that said the president did get booed when he appeared on the scoreboard during the national anthem. So it's very hit or miss. It also, I believe, depends on where the person was sitting in the stadium, because maybe they were sitting in a certain section where it was largely boos or largely cheers, and maybe that was the one section that was largely boos or cheers, and then everywhere else was the opposite, which is probably why even on the on all of the videos, to me, it sounded very mixed. So I think, just having a divided atmosphere definitely, again, did not help the New York Knicks in, really utilizing that home court advantage. And that was something that I was a little bit nervous about when I saw that the president was going to be at the game. Like, no matter how anybody feels about him, I mean, it's like it can cause division if somebody goes, if somebody in politics goes to a game like that, because everybody has all kinds of different feelings about certain issues and other things that maybe are outside of the issues. So, yeah. But sticking to the atmosphere did not help. It did not help the atmosphere. And so now it has me wondering, because last week I talked a lot about the predictive corgi and Danhausen, and the Knicks were on a 13-game win streak in the playoffs. They had not lost a game for 13 games until last night. And that was the only game where Donald Trump was in attendance. So, San Antonio fans, does this mean that Donald Trump is the counter to the Danhausen curse? Is he the counter to the Danhausen curse? I mean, all the evidence is kind of pointing towards that right now because, again, New York was on the 13-game win streak in the playoffs until the president showed up. So maybe San Antonio might try to get Donald Trump in to Game 5. They might try to get him into Game 5. Maybe they try to convince him to go to Games 6 and 7 as well, assuming that they win in Game 5 if they bring him over. So, I don't know. But stuff like that with superstition, there's always some kind of variable that can sometimes counter a curse or, a lucky charm or whatever superstition that somebody may have. Something can counter it. But we just don't know if it's Trump that countered it, or maybe San Antonio just had an emotional night. I mean, it seems like, or at least based on the previous series that San Antonio was playing in, they all seemed very close. At least in the beginning. They started off very close. You look at the Minnesota series, right? I mean, I think Minnesota had a 2-1 lead over San Antonio as well, and they ended up losing the series. Yeah, they did. The Timberwolves actually had a 1-0 lead, then San Antonio 1-2, then the Timberwolves 1-1, and it was 2-2, and then San Antonio won 2 games in a row. With the Thunder, San Antonio was down 2-1, then they beat the Thunder to tie it 2-2. Then they lost to the Thunder, and then they won the last 2 games. So I think if I'm a Knicks fan, I would not want this series to go into a game. I would not want it to go to a 7-game series. I would ideally want it to be done in 5 games, probably. Even if it means ending it in San Antonio, then by all means, like, if I'm a Knicks fan, by all means, please end it in San Antonio. But yeah, the New York Knicks, they haven't really had to go in an extended series for their past 2 series. I mean, they swept Philadelphia, and they also swept Cleveland as well. Before that, they were in a 6-game series with the Atlanta Hawks. So because of the 13-game win streak, New York is kind of used to ending these series or these series sooner. They're used to ending them a lot sooner than what they have been ending them at. So I think for San Antonio, especially with that Oklahoma City series, they have a huge advantage the longer that this playoff goes on. Like, which is part of the reason why when the Knicks went up 2-0, I was like, oh, they might be able to close this out in 4 or 5 games. But after last night, considering that, it was the highest scoring game in the series and San Antonio was able to win, makes me, or at least as a Knicks fan, I'd be a little bit nervous. If I'm a San Antonio fan, I'd be relatively happy. But it does seem like when, and this doesn't even just go for the New York Knicks series, but it also kind of goes for the Oklahoma City series and the Timberwolves series. It seems like if San Antonio cannot make their free throws, then they're kind of screwed. I mean, that's really the only part of their game where I see them really struggle is the free throws. Sometimes the decision-making is a little bit questionable. I mean, you look at the end of Game 2 where Wemby throws it into the back of one of his teammates that wasn't looking, and then Brunson is able to recover the ball and, get sent to the line, retake the lead for New York, and they're able to hold off San Antonio in the last seconds of the game. Like, that's really the only two areas where I see San Antonio struggling, is just those free throws and the decision-making. Both teams are very good at defense, clearly. I mean, they're both barely breaking 100 when they play each other, besides Game 3. I mean, both teams broke 100 by 10. It was the most that both teams had scored throughout the entire series. But yeah, it is looking like, and I'm just seeing this right now on ESPN, it says President Donald Trump is not expected to attend Game 4 of Knicks Spurs in the NBA Finals on Wednesday night at Madison Square Garden due to scheduling conflicts and obligations, sources tell ESPN. Trump, a lifelong Knicks fan, watched the majority of Game 3 from a suite. So this is our chance to see if President Donald Trump is the counter to Danhausen's curse. Because if he's not there and the Knicks win, I think that means that he's the counter to the curse. I'm a little bit superstitious, just a little bit, especially when it just happens to kind of align the way that it's been aligning. But if the Knicks win, then San Antonio has got to try to get Trump into Game 5. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. All right, so moving on to NHL. So the series between Las Vegas and the Carolina Hurricanes has been very interesting, to say the least. Vegas is currently up 2-1 against Carolina, and it's been pretty testy between both of the teams. Vegas took Game 1. They won the game 5-4. Then Game 2, Carolina, they were down 3-0 in that game. They ended up coming back in overtime to win 4-3. And then in Game 3, which was this past Saturday, Las Vegas won 5-4 in double overtime. And in that game, Fernando was also sounding off the horn at the beginning of the game, which is, I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner, but I knew it was probably going to end up happening just simply because he's on the Raiders now, so it makes sense to have him go in and do that. But yeah, right now, Vegas is up 2-1 in the series against the Carolina Hurricanes. And what's interesting about these games is that in every single one of these games, Carolina has scored 4 points. In every single game, they've scored 4 points. The only time that they've lost, or the only times that they've lost, are when they allow Las Vegas to score more, which is 5 points. If they're able to hold Las Vegas below 4 points, they're able to win. Now, both teams, the way that they play is really interesting to watch. They both play very fast on both sides of the floor, or I should say both sides of the rink, more or less. But in one of the games, I think it was game 3 when Carolina was coming back from being down 4-0. They scored 3 goals in, I think it was 37, 38, 39 seconds, something like that. They just scored 3 goals in a really short amount of time. And we've seen that Vegas is capable of doing the exact same thing to other teams. When they played the Canadiens in the conference finals, they were down 3-0. They came back, scored 3 goals in the third period within 5 minutes. And there was 10 minutes left in that period, and they ended up coming back and winning the game, or winning that game of the series. So, and part of the reason why I bring this up is because some of the reactions to Vegas versus Carolina online have been quite funny, actually, just because of how people are making jokes about, oh, I'm going to go to the bathroom really fast, or I'm going to go do a load of laundry, and they come back and then the score is just completely different from what it was, even though they were only out of the room for 1 minute, 90 seconds, something like that. And all of a sudden the game is in overtime, or people making jokes about turning the game off because, oh, it's over. There's no way they come back. And then all of a sudden it goes into overtime. I mean, it's just absolutely insane. Just super fun couple of series with the Stanley Cup and the NBA playoffs going on at the same time. Both have been absolutely fun to watch. And I think game 4, that is actually going to be today at 7 p.m. So we're going to see, and it's on ABC. I think all the NHL games are on, or all the Stanley Cup games are on ABC. But yeah, it's been super fun to watch both these teams, not even just in this final series, the championship series, but it's also been really fun just watching both of these teams play throughout the entire playoffs. I mean, they've both had very dominant runs throughout each of their playoffs. I mean, you look at Carolina, they swept their first series. They swept their second series. They only gave up 1 game. Oh, so it was Carolina that played the Canadiens, but still, they gave up 1 game to the Canadiens. That was it. Going into the Stanley Cup final, they had only lost 1 game, which is insane. Vegas, they gave up 2 games in their first series. They gave up 2 games in their second series, and then they swept Colorado. And now they're up 2-1 against Carolina. So both these teams have been very dominant throughout the entirety of this NHL playoffs. And now they're meeting up, and it's become one of the most electric series to watch out of all of the Stanley Cups that I've seen. I mean, this has been one of the most fun Stanley Cup series that I've watched. And even the playoffs as a whole, it's just been really fun watching the NHL playoffs. I mean, seeing Pittsburgh get stuck in the first round again, just like just like in football, in baseball, they just can never seem to make it past the first round of the playoffs. It's just become kind of a meme at this point. To now having clearly the two best teams in the NHL playing against each other in the Stanley Cup Final in every single game is an absolute dogfight when these two teams have played so far. I mean, have any of you guys ever seen somebody slash a hockey stick in half? It's nuts. I mean, come on. It's so much fun watching stuff like that happen. Or at least like with hockey. Like when it gets heated like that for hockey, it's so much fun to watch. But yeah, that is all that we have time for today. I did post some reactions to the Brendan Sorsby story on Twitter, and I also posted one yesterday on Instagram and TikTok. So if you want to see more stuff like that, like just more instant reaction stuff, I am on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook for that. If you jumped on after 2 o'clock or after the Friday time, then you can always go back and listen to what you missed on podcasting platforms like YouTube, Spotify, Millions.co, Patreon, Amazon Music, and other podcasting platforms as well. A lot of times I'll put just like a brief little description, nothing too crazy, but that's where all the broadcasts go after they, after we're done going live on Tuesday on the main date. Also soon there is going to be merch coming out. That is going to also be on Millions.co. It's going to be coming out in a couple of weeks. I don't know the exact date yet, but I've been working on it for the past month or so, and it's going to be, I think it'll be good. I mean, I've been putting in a lot for it. It's just kind of a casual shirt in a sense. Once I know the date and, get the merch design sent to Millions, I'll be able to, share pictures of what the merch is going to look like on the social platforms. So I guess that's another reason to go and follow the social media platforms as well, because that is where you'll be able to see the merch. You'll be able to find the merch. And yeah, next week, if there's anything else that is just absolutely completely bonkers in college sports, whether it's college football, college basketball, or other college sports, just generally college sports, just like the 5-year rule, we'll be talking about that next week. The Stanley Cup and the NBA playoffs are likely going to either be over or they're going to be on the back end of both of those series, depending on how the series go. For all we know, Vegas could win 2 more games and the series could be over before next week. So we could be, I guess it really depends on, again, it depends on the outcome of both the NBA playoffs and the NHL playoffs, how we talk about them. And then I think next week we're also going to start talking about MLB just a little bit more. The Cubs especially, because they've had some interesting win streaks and losing streaks, to say the least. The last time that I had talked about them, they were on a big win streak. I think they had won 11 or 12 games in a row. And then about a week later, they were on a 11 or 12 game losing streak. So we're going to have to look back at that and figure out what the heck is going on with the Cubs, and just looking at the big picture within the MLB, because we are starting to kind of approach mid-season a little bit. That mid-season is going to be closer to the end of July. But that being said, see you next week. Slide out.